Okay. Nice. So going to receive the event information. Okay, Omdina is live right now. Just go ahead.
All right. Welcome, everyone. We'll wait a little bit for people to join. Rehab can give me the thumbs up when we've had enough people on LinkedIn join, for example, because I don't really have overview on that. Just let me know. But as everyone joins, feel free to type something in the box to interact with the other people, maybe where you're from. I hope that you can see us today. We're in a beautiful office setting. I don't know, somewhere in Hong Kong, I would say. Let's just give it a few more moments and then I'm going to wait for the green light and we can get started.
People are starting to join, I think. Okay, and we are on Facebook as well.
Welcome, everyone. We're streaming on a few platforms here, so we'll just wait a little bit for a little bit more people to join and then we'll get started.
Now live. You are live now, Lucy.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I see people coming in. Hi everyone. We have some. Should we do we have enough people, Rehab, to get started now?
More than 60 if you want to 60.
Okay.
Yes, and I'm just checking Facebook and YouTube.
All right, let's wait a little bit longer. Thanks everyone for joining this session today. We're live on a few platforms right now, so we're just going to give it a few more minutes for other people to join. And I see right now on LinkedIn, when I'm looking, there's a few people from all over the world. Thanks for joining. All right. All right, so we're almost 5 minutes past, so I'll get the session going. And hopefully more people join in a little bit. So welcome to our first career-focused event. Career advice is something that our community was very interested in. What we've been hearing over the past few times, that career advice is something that a lot of people are looking for. So we decided to showcase 4 people from the 4 professionals, young professionals from the community to come give a interactive panel discussion about the topic careers, about getting starting a career, switching a career, learning about thinking about different career choices. So this is going to be a very diverse session where you're going to hear from very diverse people with different backgrounds who all have had their own journey. So hopefully it's going to offer very diverse perspectives for everyone, so that anyone who's joining can get some valuable insight out of this. So before diving in though, let me introduce myself. My name is Lucy. I'm the head of community at Omdina. Let me tell you a little bit about Omdina. So if you don't know about Omdina, we are a bottom-up collaborative AI development platform where a global community of change makers from all over the world build innovative and ethical AI solutions to some of the world's most pressing problems in collaboration with impact-driven startups, NGOs, and social enterprises from all over the world. So I'm excited to be facilitating this event today, representing Omdena and the community. So as I said, today you'll hear from people with very diverse backgrounds, journeys, and aspirations. This event is designed for people at all levels in their career. And the way that it's set up and designed today is that you've all submitted, so all attendees have submitted some questions beforehand. We've decided to categorize those questions into the most popular topics of learning path. So that's the first popular topic, portfolios and experience needed to join the workforce or join a career, applying for jobs, and then finally shifting careers, so switching careers. Those were the topics. So we've designed it that we've grouped the questions into those topics, and we're going to have a discussion with the 4 people on this panel here, where hopefully through the discussion, your questions are going to be answered. And then, of course, at the end, we're going to have a time for 15 minutes for Q&A from the audience, where, from wherever anybody's tuning in from, we'll get the questions answered. So now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists. So we have, if you start from, I don't know, my left, maybe somebody else's right, but Rosanna, she has glasses on. She is a PhD, she has a PhD in astrophysics, who transitioned from an academic research career into data science. And she did the transition all of last year. And now she's on her way to specialize, and she's specialized in the sustainability climate change space. A very successful data scientist at this point in time. And then we have next to me is David. So David used to work in the NGO space, completely unrelated to data science. He transitioned into the data science field through a boot camp. And now he's actually just started working as a data engineer for the past 1 or 2 months. Ram, next to him, he is a sophomore in university in India. And what he has been, all of them have been a part of Omdena and a part of our projects and worked with us. That's why we have them here on the panel. And he joined Omdena last year. And what he's working towards right now, he's involved in various projects with us, some research projects, and he's looking for a career in the machine learning research space after he does his master's and his PhD and so forth. And then there's Nishran, who has over 15 years of experience developing products and building software. And she has hired and managed teams of 5 to 10 people, or at all times 5 to 10 people, and has a bunch of experience in that area of, what is it that hiring managers are looking for? What is it what you're looking for when you're building a team? So we have, I hope you can see the diversity here and see that anybody can get some useful insight out of this session. So with that being said, I will get started by diving into our first topic of the day, which is the learning path. And we'll have around 10 minutes where the panelists are going to have a little bit of a discussion answering these main questions. So the main questions are, number 1, what is the best path I can follow in terms of technologies to learn and roles to apply for to enter into the data science field while making the best use of the solid mathematical and statistical knowledge I acquired with my undergraduate qualification? So what's the best path that I can follow leveraging my background? The second is, what would be the fastest or most effective path to get to success in data science if you did have a technical background and study something quantitative? And then the third question is a degree important? So those are the 3 main questions in the learning path section. So I think I'll open the stage to the panelists and see who wants to get started with that topic. Nishran, I think you're muted.
Yeah, so I can get started. So let's say, what is the best path you follow, right? So let's take a step back and see, what does the data scientist typically do, or what is the desirable qualities that one would require for a data scientist? And as I understand it, it's four things, right? There's this business or domain knowledge. There is mathematics, which includes probability and statistics. There's computer science, which includes software, data architecture, computer engineering, and so on. And then the last thing is your soft skills, right? And I think that's a requirement for every job, but I would just throw that in there, which is communication, negotiation, and so on and so forth. And what you can do is kind of take a look at these things and see that where are your strengths. There are people who are strong in one or two of these things, but not in all of them. If you have somebody who's strong on the business side, on the computer science side, on the math side, as well as the soft skills, then you found yourself a unicorn, I would say. Typically, people have one or two strengths, right? And then you take a look at yourself and see where you're coming from. Are you coming from a math background? Are you coming from a domain? You have some domain expertise. Let's say you're from finance, or you're a lawyer, or for the case of David, he's from an NGO side. So those are all domain strengths that you have, and then see where are the gaps for you, right? Maybe for myself, I'm a physicist and did research in astrophysics as well, just like Rosanna. And I did not have a computer science background. Yes, my math and stats were strong. I would say, okay, I had I have good soft skills because manage people. I've worked for so long. I have gained the experience to do that. So for me, that was I needed to fill a gap there. So you need to look at yourself and say, where is my gap and where do I need to go? And of course, there are various ways to build the experience and gain the experience, right? And I'm sure we're going to touch upon that. So I'll let others touch upon how you get that experience and all that. But I would say, look at these four things, see where you're coming from, and identify your gap, and then go for that and start building yourself, right? Because as I said, you don't need to have all the four, but if you have strengths in 2 to 3 of the 4, you nailed it. That that you're qualified as a good data scientist, and you can kind of work on your career from there.
Yeah, I'd add to that, Nishan. Like, data science is such a broad field nowadays, and ever growing. And in any job search, if you can pinpoint more specifically what you are going for, a specific role or a specific company or a specific industry, then you're able to look exactly what you should be focusing on. What are the types of problems that this role or company or industry is trying to solve, and how does data science fit into this picture?
I was going to, so what I wanted to talk a little bit about was that, adding on to David especially, is, how you can bring value to someone. And that should not be, your first thing when you think of starting in data science, but especially from a student's perspective, whether you're still in, undergrad school, you haven't finished your degree. So, you can kind of ask yourself, is my degree really important for me to get started in data science, or do I, have to wait to finish my degree? I'd say that, in your college courses, your math and stat courses, as Nishan mentioned, they're important because they can help you in your data science job or whatever you want to do. But apart from that, colleges, they won't do the best job in teaching you, latest technologies like, in big data and cloud, like whether it be Spark or Hadoop or, AWS services or Google Cloud. You can have 1 or 2 lectures, but in the end, these are not, the advanced topics anymore. They're kind of, looped into what's kind of the requirement to get a good job in data science. So you need to sort of depend on yourself or do self-study to get started. And I'd say that personally for me, for example, what worked good for me was getting started with the deep learning AI courses. They do a good job in teaching you not only the, the theoretical fundamentals, but also touching here and there about, what good machine learning practice looks like, what you need to communicate with another. Of course, the actual experience in the real world looks a bit different. And I think we'll, collectively get to that in a few moments, but I think that's a good place to start. And what I just want to say is that, as a college student, you have a great time right now to get started. So don't focus on what the best resource is. You just need to get started. Don't postpone or think you'll start next semester or next year. You just pick one thing and get started with it, and you'll eventually, find yourself your own path, because there's no one perfect path.
Rosanna, what about you?
Yeah, thank you, guys. I think we covered quite a lot of very important points. So I think I would just like kind of try to emphasize on some of them. And for those who don't know, one of the things that I do in my free time is talking to students and women and minorities in general, also mentoring to enter in this world of data science. And this is a question that I get a lot, like how you start. And I think one of the things that we didn't mention yet, but it's something that is very, very common, is this loop of courses, that is very easy for us to get into. This there are so many things out there to learn, and then you can get into this this point where you're just keeping learning from one course to the next and to the next, and then this is something that is very dangerous, because you are not really being focused. There's a little bit of what David and Nisrin said before, knowing. That's usually the question that I ask people, what is usually if you're working with data science or AI, unless you're doing research, your chances are that you are applying it to something. So what is it, what are your interests? What kind of sector or industry you want to work at, or at least that are appealing to you? And understanding those is kind of crucial for you to understand what kind of skills you need, because, for example, the kind of skills that you need for business and finance might be quite different than what you need for healthcare. And then having this notion of what skills you need to build, a little bit of what Nisrin was saying before about this gap of things that you don't know, and how are the things that you know, and so on. But understanding, so that you take one resource as Ram said as well, and stick to it, and then you're done with that, and then you can move on to the next stage. But then you know that you are building a knowledge that is oriented to where you want to go. And just to highlight again, it's really not appreciated enough how soft skills are important in this field. At least for me, transitioning to data science, I was very surprised to see that actually were the soft skills that I gained in academia that were actually quite helpful for me. For example, the ability to explain topics and so on. Sorry, that's my cat. And to really understand how to explain things at very different levels, like a very technical level or a very simple level to people that are not necessarily technical and that will be working with you as well. So these are a very important things to address.
Cool. Thanks for that. One thing actually I think would be interesting for Nisrin and maybe David as well. Nisrin, the aspect of a degree, is a degree important? And then for David, I think David comes from a background where he actually doesn't have a technical degree. He has a degree, but not a technical degree. So I think Nisrin and David could have a good back and forth on that.
Okay. So
yeah, go ahead, Nisrin.
So degree meaning a degree in data science or degree in general, right? I'll speak to both. So I think starting with degree in data science. So I would say it's not necessarily required if you show your strengths in other ways. So as I mentioned, right, the 4 pieces, and maybe you have 2 of the 4, but lean into those strengths, right? Start with that first, and then you can always fill in the rest later. So it's not necessary to have a degree, but you have to showcase yourself that you are equivalent to a degree, right? You have to do that so that you can stand out as a candidate as well in front of somebody else who has already a degree. So you need to showcase your work, you need to showcase your skills, and you need to showcase everything, all of this, either publicly or get endorsements about these. And you can do it by building a good portfolio, and that could be projects that you've worked on, communities that you're involved with, because being in community kind of endorses others that yes, you have worked with them, that you have the credentials to work with them, and then so that's so you get additional credentials from them, and then make sure that that people know about it. Yeah, you may have built a great portfolio and you may have worked and volunteered in organizations, but if people don't know that what you've done, then that's of no use, right? So it's like a tree falls in the forest, but if you can't hear the fall, then you can't hear the crash, right? So you make sure you make your crash heard. Make sure you write online something about what you've learned. Either if you've taught somebody something, make sure that you can post that video on YouTube or on Medium blog, that people can validate what you know. So those are the things I can say, that you don't necessarily need a degree in data science, but show that validation somehow, and there are various ways to show it. And I think the team will touch upon that too. So I'll just elaborate it in a very high level way. And then whether you need a degree at all, in some parts of the world, degrees are absolutely essential. For example, countries like India or Germany, if you don't have a degree, I don't know if they would even consider your resume for a job applications. But it depends. So it depends on the part of the world. I'm based in Silicon Valley, California. There are a lot of people who don't have degrees and have started companies and all. So the culture is a little different. So you have to see which country and which culture you are in, right? You're okay if you have a degree. If you don't have a degree, it doesn't matter. But then you have to showcase your work, what you've done, what you may have built. You may have built an app. You can show that. You can showcase that. Then people don't necessarily look at your degrees. And I think these days companies are also realizing that degree is not everything, right? If you can showcase your skills, and if you have the drive, and if you have the passion, people are realizing, and this is a slow change. Of course, it's going to take a while that education is not always via a degree. Education is also via experience. Education is via working together on projects. So people are slowly realizing that. I think the scene of education is going to change in the future. So I do see a little bit of that turn happening. And so, yeah, be careful. Of course, these days, most people require degrees, but there can be some special occasions where you may not even need a degree. So I will let David maybe build on that.
Yeah, I'm glad you spoke, because I think more people want to hear from you who actually has hiring experience. But I'll just speak from my own experience. Yeah, my bachelor's degree was in geography, mostly with a cultural emphasis. So very far away from any sort of hard science. And in fact, I had to take statistics twice in college. And so that didn't deter me from finding a great interest and fascination in data science nowadays, seeing how applicable statistics and math knowledge can be in affecting the world around us. So I would always encourage people not to be deferred by a line in the job description that requires a specific degree. Let them tell you no if they are not willing to budge on that requirement, but go for it.
So just make a point on that. I think that David, that's a very critical thing you brought up. It doesn't matter your domain. Data science is literally in every domain today, right? So whether you're a lawyer, you can use NLP to sift through documents and look for insights over there. So even as a lawyer, you need those data science skills, right? Or a psychologist, right? How do you come up with a marketing strategy, right? People are hiring psychologists today in marketing teams so that they can bring that perspective. So don't think you don't have value to add. There's data science in every domain, and your domain expertise has value in data science. So look for those areas where you can bring those strengths into the data science area.
Cool. Interesting. So the main takeaways from kind of the learning path area is really find your niche, find what you're interested in, find the transferable skills from your previous industry, perhaps into data science, because it's everywhere. Degrees are not needed, but depending on your location, of course, make yourself knowledgeable about requirements in your specific area. So I think those were the main takeaways, and I really enjoyed that discussion, and it really transfers well into our next session, which is about our next section, which is about portfolios and experiences needed. So you guys touched on that a little bit, but some of the main things that stepped out were how actually, so you guys talked about how it's important to work and showcase your skill, but how do you prepare data science portfolios? How to choose a project? What skills should you develop to stand out from other candidates? An interesting question is, if you go back on time, what would you change in your own job search? So these are all questions I think that you guys can touch on, and I think it would be interesting to hear from Ram first, as he has built a pretty impressive data science portfolio. So I think it's something, and he's in the works of doing that right now. So maybe that's something that you could start with.
Yeah, sure. So I was going to say that in order to build a data science portfolio, you can start in so many ways. There's no end to that. But what I'd suggest is that when you're transitioning from a learning space to start coding and making good projects, you can start by finding people to do a lot, help you along with that, or you can collaborate along with. And I'd say that you can find them everywhere. You can find them in online communities. You can find them in your colleges. There's no end to that, because before you actually start coding out a data science project, I think it's also important to make sure your knowledge is solidified, and you can do that by discussing the intrinsics of an AI algorithm with fellow student or a fellow colleague, because that will boost your own inherent understanding of it. And I think that's important, not just because you're learning more, but because you can collaborate with people that you're doing well with, and that's pretty important. But also, when you need to start building your own projects to not just put on your resume, but also highlight you as a strong candidate on the radar of a recruiter, or even in your own company or community, I think what's important is that you spend time in it. Because I oftentimes see people just not like, a lot of people don't do it, but it's important that people don't use, for example, notebooks from online courses as projects. Even changing a couple of lines of code doesn't make it your own project. Your own project should be something you care about, something you're passionate about. For example, if I'm interested in aviation, I would go ahead and find a data set on Kaggle, for example, that is related to aviation. And what I'd start doing with it is data analysis, which is quite as important as any models you built or anything else you do. Because a couple of months down the line, if someone else tries to read your code, or a recruiter or anyone else, what they would want to see is that what kind of data set were you working with? What kind of insights were you able to draw out of it? Because in the end, that's important. Were you able to find important trends? Were you able to see any class imbalance? Were you able to see any kind of data distribution? Afterwards, so this is kind of important. So that should not be underestimated. And in the end, to be honest, you should not aim to spend more than 60% of your time on increasing the accuracy of your model. More 60% of your time that you've spent on it, that's good enough. After that, you can sort of focus more on making a user-ended application, because that's kind of the data science aspect of it. Are people able to understand what you have done? At the very least, you should aim to write a wrapper script. But if you're feeling more adventurous, you can go ahead for making a small Streamlit application. If it's a computer vision project, people can choose images, classify them, process them, or even make a fast API application and host it for free on Heroku. There's a lot of things you can do, but you need to do them. Having a Jupyter notebook and a pickled model file is not a data science project. A data science project is well documented, and I would say that at the end, it speaks to the person looking at the project about what kind of a data scientist you are, or you can be, or you can grow to be. You need to answer all kinds of questions, like what was the problem you were initially working with? What kind of solutions were you able to find? Even if it's a small solution in a very particular narrow area, you were still able to find it, and that's a good accomplishment that you need to highlight. And in the end, what did you learn out of it? These are things that should be explicit, but they can also be implicit from the kind of work you've done in your projects. So yeah, those are my 2 cents on how to build a good project in data science.
Does anyone want to add on to that?
Maybe Rosanna.
Yeah, so like I really like what Ron said about like this thing of like really spending time on building your portfolio, because if you want, your portfolio is how you are portraying yourself, is how you are putting yourself out there. You know, like all this entire process of looking for a job is like what kind of person how you want to be perceived, if you want, like a kind of like professional you want to look like. And one thing that we have to remember when we are writing, when they're building a portfolio, is that it's a bit tricky and not something necessarily easy to do, but you are building a portfolio that should speak to technical people, but also to, for example, HR people that are not necessarily technical, but they need to understand what you're doing, because they are going to be the first person that you're going to be talking in a process, like in a selection process, if you're applying for a big company. So how you do that, like how you manage to tell a story for the projects that you are choosing, what projects you will be choosing, and so on. So like we come back a little bit to the topic of what kind of industries you're interested about and what kind of problems are most common in those industries. There's something that Nisrin said a little bit before, and then understanding what kind of skills you need for those industries, understanding what kind of problems are like common for them. You can try to choose like, you don't need to necessarily make your portfolio about one industry, but maybe like, for example, I was interested in sustainability. So, okay, so I'm going to work a little bit about like, I don't know, trash, which was something that we work together, some of us here. Let's talk a little bit about renewable energies. Let's talk a little bit about some other topics that are related under this umbrella of this topic. And another important thing is like each project should be about something that you want to portray. It might be that one project you want to actually portray your ability to communicate. So that means that you don't need to make something super complicated. If you make a data analysis, like, you know, like if you just show some statistical analysis, some images and so on, this is data science. And you can use this to just take a data set about some topic that is interesting for you, take some insights from it, manage to communicate this in a way that is not super technical, in a way that is also interesting for someone. And then you can have another project that might be a little bit more technical, where you are trying to portray your ability to use some specific method that might be more advanced or not. But then this is going to be another story. But then like you have to have this kind of like notion of what is that you want to achieve, or what are the skills that you want to show from this project. And I think that the last thing is just like trying to be to stand out by not trying to be too technical, because you know, like you can, it's very easy to see like people that come from technical backgrounds that sometimes they can only talk to technical people. Like coming from physics myself, like sometimes it's like painful, you know, especially like for students and so on, like that you see that they are talking and like people are like feeling that they are not understanding anything that you are saying, and no one likes to feel like the person that doesn't get it, you know, like, so you have to make something that is friendly for the non-technical people as well, but it's still showing that you have domain of the topic. And the way you do this is really understanding what you're doing, really focusing on what you want to show, because then otherwise you start to talk about too many things and then it gets confusing. So I think that's also my thoughts on this.
So I can just add to that from a perspective of somebody who would be looking at a portfolio, is that I want to see why you did the piece of work that you did, right? It's very important to understand why somebody does something. Yeah, you go and take a Kaggle data set and build a notebook out of it, but I want to understand the why behind it, right? And that's very critical, because when you go out and join the workforce, there is always a why behind what you're doing, that piece of work, right? So it's good to kind of engage yourself in all ways in your projects as to why am I taking on this exercise? Maybe I want, as Rosanna said, right? She was interested in sustainability, so she picked a project based on that, and then she did the work. Or maybe it's to portray your communication skills or whatever. So always understand your why first, and then talk about the what and the hows. What some people do is they just dive into how they did this and how cool pictures show up and so on. So always understand that whole pipeline as to why am I doing this? And then where is the data coming from? Do I understand it? So build that whole pipeline. And what I would say is that quality over quantity, right? Don't build like 100 notebooks and post it on GitHub. Build a few projects which kind of take you through an entire sequence of why you did it, Where does the data come from? How did you analyze the data? Show your curiosity in that analysis. Do your own thing. Don't look at somebody else. Just shut it and take the data and see what you can see out of that. And for me, those are those creative thinking skills that will show up in your project, right? And then take it through an entire sequence, finish it off, go to an entire visualization, whether you do it through an app or just some stuff. If I see a few pipelines from the beginning to the end, very nicely done with proper documentation that somebody can understand your code, that's a lot of value to me, and I understand a lot about that person and their work style and their work ethics. Then somebody who just put like tons of books on GitHub with some code, where I don't understand it or I don't know why you've done that project. So definitely quality over quantity, which kind of portrays your skill, your own thought process, is of great value.
Yeah, I actually really like, that was a really great point that you made, Nishant, there, because I think it's also important to understand the why behind everything, and especially if you're putting work into something, why are you doing that? So I think that was a really good point you made. So let's move on to the next section. So I think we heard a little bit about, like the importance of building a portfolio, different ways of building a portfolio, and how to think about building a portfolio, what's important to think about there. Now let's talk a little bit about applying for jobs. So I think here, the two main questions that came up were, I'm applying for a data science role, but I'm not getting answers. I'm a self-taught data scientist. How can I make them call me? And then the second one is, how do I know I'm good enough to apply for jobs? So I think it would be great if David could start, because he is the most recent job receiver on the panel. So maybe you want to go ahead and start.
Sure, I'll kickstart. Yeah, something I thought about and I've been taught is that people get people jobs, and you're going to be hired by a person, even though there are specific kind of scripts that screen a lot of resumes for particular keywords and things like that. And so being able to make a human connection, however that is, if you're able to leverage social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever it is, if you're vocalizing the things that you're working on and thinking about and learning and wanting to achieve in your career, that's the kind of thing that will enter the atmosphere of these conversations, and you might get contacted that way, or just make a connection where you're able to reach out. I think in the broader community of technology and data science specifically, people want to help. I'm so inspired by Rosanna, who is helping mentor people to enter the field, and it takes people like that to help others enter, and who have gone down the path before and are able to share some of their knowledge and wisdom and insight. So I think reaching out on LinkedIn just to ask for 10 to 15 minutes of just getting to ask someone about their work is always, the worst thing they can say is no. And the best thing you can do is get a conversation with a person and learn something from them, and learn maybe what more specifically you should be focusing on if they're in a kind of position that you're aiming for.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? Is how, because you mentioned, people want to help. Is there a certain way that you would recommend reaching out to people?
Yeah, I mean, the people who it makes most sense to reach out to, at least in my experience, with looking through LinkedIn, looking at people who have the kind of role that I want, and And so I have specific questions that I want to ask them about what this role entails and how did they get there. You know, it's obviously not going to be a do this, do that, and you will get this result, because there's so many unknowns in the process, but it will help you. Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it.
Cool. Rosanna, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I really love this that David said about the networking, like, because this for me was like a crucial, and you know, coming from academia and also a little bit of my personality, I used to be like super shy, and I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to go around talking to people. And then now I've been doing this for a year, and now it's much simpler. And honestly, even like when you go later on into the process of a job interview and so on, you are just more relaxed because you, for example, you already learned how to train your elevator pitch and stuff like that. But one thing that I wanted to add is that it might be a bit silly, but it's really serious how much we need to understand like how the algorithms of the social media work. So for example, just like the story that I like to always say, like I was before a researcher, so I was a postdoc and I was doing my research there. And then my role obviously was a researcher or a postdoc fellow and so on. The moment I joined Omdena and I just changed my role to machine learning engineer, suddenly, and I wasn't even looking for jobs back then, suddenly a lot of people started to approach me just because I started to appear in their search, because it might be silly, but like the recruiters are looking for data scientists, but they don't have a crystal ball to identify that maybe you have another role, but you're interested in data science. So this is like a kind of like a straightforward way to get just more attention. Same for like not necessarily only roles, but also like kind of sectors. So you are interested, in my case, I was interested in the sector of energy. So like put something there, or climate change, put something there that make it appear so that people can find you, and they can also find the other people that are also in those fields as well. And the most important thing, do not approach people asking for a job, because this is usually doesn't come out well. So as David said, you can always come and ask for advice or ask for like hearing their experience and so on. And this is usually something that people are happy to share. And as David said, like worst case scenario, they will just not reply. But if they do, you just gain so much more from that.
So,
Do you have any thoughts?
yeah, I can build upon that. So as both David and Rosanna mentioned, right, it's very, very essential to network, build your network. This will be the biggest helper in helping you get a job. As you know, yes, ATS words are good. You have your buzzwords in your LinkedIn profile, and the recruiters can catch you. But ultimately, you need to get to the hiring manager, right? So make sure that you network with the right people so that they can speak up for you, right? So being part of organizations where people, there are credible people in there who can validate your work, who can speak to your work. That'll be very critical when somebody's looking at your profile and looking for recommendations that, what is this person about? So networking is one of the most biggest factors that can help you get a job. And people say, I'm applying, I have all the credentials, but I'm not getting an answer. So there are of course various ways to look at this, right? Sometimes women typically don't apply for jobs unless they are like 110% qualified. I'm like, no, I'm not applying. I don't have these skills. But what recruiters typically do is they just put out a whole laundry list out there of things that they are looking for in a candidate. It does not necessarily mean that this person needs to have all the skills that they think that I will put it out there, and maybe if I hit some percentage of this, I will get a good candidate. So you have to think from their standpoint what they are looking at, right? So don't necessarily have to hit the 100% mark or 110% mark for some people. But if you are about 60, 70%, go jump in and submit your resume. If you don't submit, you won't know whether you're qualified or not, right? And it's okay to find out. Actually, I find interviews is a great learning experience. So sometimes things don't match up, right? Whether they're looking for something, some skills in you, and you looking for something, and sometimes it doesn't match up, and that's okay. Think of every interview or every rejection as a learning experience, right? What did I learn from it? Okay, go try to find out if you can. It's very hard, because the recruiting process does not. It's like as to why, what was the thing that I missed, or what were exactly that they were looking for. So it's not a reflection on you, but reflection on maybe the skill pool was not there, or there were too many candidates with the same skills, and so on. So make sure you do that. And then other thing is, make sure you're prepared. Prepare for an interview. Go do mock-ups. Go learn with, grab a colleague and say, take me through some interview questions. Because when you are in front of a person, you generally a little bit nervous. So you lose kind of, if you were prepared 100%, you will show up about 80% in your interview. But if you're well prepared, you will be it'll be, that you will be very comfortable, and that comfort level will make you speak up much better, in a much better way, and speak to your strengths and all very smoothly. So I would say always be prepared, do mock-ups, learn from other people, so that you have a better chance of showcasing yourself in front of the hiring manager. Other things I could say is that people don't just look at your technical skills, right? They also ask you a lot of behavioral questions. And so make sure that you also prepare for your behavioral questions, right? What are the tough situations you face? How did you get out of a tricky conversation with somebody? How did you say no to your boss? All these things are very, they kind of indirectly tell you a lot about the person, and they tell the hiring manager as to what this candidate will do. Besides technical skills, you also need to work in a team. You need to communicate with your peers. You need to communicate with your hiring manager. Maybe you even need to communicate with your customer. And if you don't have these behavioral skills, that becomes very, it becomes tough for the hiring manager to see how well you would do in a job. So always prepare for that. Have 2 or 3 stories for each of the behavioral and interview questions ready, and in your kind of preparation script, right? That I will speak to this few stories on that. So make sure you are well prepared, so that you get that call back from the hiring manager saying, yes, this person was relaxed. They answered all the behavioral questions in a way that I can gauge that person's value, right? So make sure you do that. And I think, yeah, so, don't lose heart if you don't get a call back. Sometimes people get so many candidates that they're not able to get back to everybody. So just because you don't get a call back doesn't mean anything, a reflection on you. You're saying, okay, I learned something from this. Let's apply to the next job, and continue to do so. And then the key thing is network. Make sure you build a strong network that can speak for you, and then can speak to your skills. And definitely sometimes word of mouth is where the job goes, right? So make sure you have that network standing behind you when you're looking for jobs.
All right, thank you. So that kind of wraps up the journey to actually looking to get the job, right? And one important aspect that Nishran mentioned there was, we're all humans, and we also want to interact with humans, not just people who have a list of experience but don't have any ability to interact with humans. So the being social, being able to get your point across is something that also is very important, as it seems. All right, so I think we've pretty much answered, I think, with this discussion, all of the questions that came up prior to the event. We have another 10 minutes, so I think we can start by jumping into some of the questions that you are right now asking. So let's start there. So some we've answered, but I'll just list them already. Do you think companies appreciate if you add on to your CV small projects you complete on DataCamp or on Kaggle? I think Nishran answered that one pretty well, right? Quality over quantity. Don't just throw anything on there. That's very important. So then next question is keeping on or picking some, how important is domain logic? So keeping on with the tech side of things, or should you pick some domain knowledge for your master's? So I think this question is domain knowledge versus a technical domain specific master's versus a technical master's. What do you guys recommend? Rosanna, I think that would be something that you could answer maybe.
Sure, I can start and maybe someone else can also jump in later on. So I am very much advocate that technical skills you can learn. There are so many places for you to learn nowadays. Like there are courses, there are like boot camps, there are paid courses, there are free courses, there are like all sorts of styles for you to learn books online, but the domain knowledge is something that you really have to take your time. And for me, actually, was the most challenging thing, and the thing that I've been building for quite some time, more than a year, actually. So I think that trying to get into, that's why I insist so much into getting into projects that are related to what the things that you want to do, and even like learn the kind of language that people use, because I mean, it might be silly, but like just an example that I like to give, like I come from physics, I come from like a very, natural science background. And then I was like, my second project with them, then I was actually like about the pandemic. And then there were like all those folks from humanities, and they were like, oh, the global south. And I was like, what is the global south? Like, I mean, what do they mean by that? And then like, and then turns out this is like something that is very common that people talk, like, so like knowing the kind of jargon and so on. This is very important in whatever sector they're going to be working, because this is like how people communicate. And if you cannot communicate like this, they will not perceive you as one of them. And I'm not saying that, of course, like building the technical skills are not important, but so that's why I think it's important, for example, when you have like a background that is different. For example, I think it's fantastic that David has a background in geography, because, for example, if me or maybe Ram, like, or even like Nishri, like we are all like from a more like technical part, we jump into a project that requires a lot of knowledge of geospatial analysis of things like this. Of course, we can learn and so on, but he has like this domain knowledge that he already built for several years. So this is always a matter of like, whatever background you have, whatever education you have, even if it's something on the side, how can you transform this into valuable knowledge? So this is something that that's why I like so much people that come from non-technical backgrounds, because they will learn eventually the technical things anyways, but they will still have like this completely unique perspective of how to solve problems and so on. And I think this is something that is very valuable for every organization nowadays, because all the sectors in the world are becoming digitalized, right? So that means that we need people from all sorts of backgrounds all over the place. And I believe that in the next years, everybody will have to have some notion of data science, some knowledge of data science. So having this extra knowledge is something that is extremely valuable as a professional. So I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that.
I was just gonna add like a sentence or two about that. It's quite as you know, like you said it just right, that you should learn about domain knowledge from expertise, especially if you don't have the opportunity to be from a non-technical background. That's kind of an advantage in many scenarios. For example, if you're working in an NLP project, that deals with legal policies, if you have someone that's a policy expert from your partner organization, make advantage of that opportunity and make sure that you learn as much as you can, because you might not have the same, you might not have access to the same person in another project. And when you do that, next time you don't have access to the same person or a policy expert, you'll be able to share, not of course 100% of that expertise, but you'll know some of the basic things that you need to work around. Say policy, these are like policy incentives, or these are how policies are structured around landscape restoration. Like, and if I'm taking an example from a project I'm working on, so that's pretty useful in that terms, I would say.
So if I can just add to that, so I totally understand. If you have the domain knowledge, you're already ahead, right? So because it takes as Rosanna also mentioned, it takes a while to get expertise in the domain knowledge. So it depends on how deep you want to go in that domain knowledge, right? Some of us come from PhD backgrounds in some subjects and so on. So we have a depth. But why do you want that domain knowledge? Are you passionate about that domain knowledge? Is first thing I would ask, if you want to go and get that domain knowledge, right? Let's say you already have the math and the computer science background. So, and you want to get some other additional edge by having some domain knowledge. Make sure that you are interested in that domain. If you're not interested, let's say if it's something to do with finance and I'm not interested in it, then it does not it will not help you too much because you won't be passionate about it. So make sure that that domain that you're trying to attach yourself to, that you're really interested in that aspect of it. And then another thing is continuous learning, and I cannot emphasize enough of this, that things are changing so rapidly in technology, in domain knowledges and so on, and the way we do things, right? Because of the digitization that's happening in our world, is that you have to continuously learn. So maybe today's domain knowledge is tomorrow's something else, right? Ancient knowledge. So make sure you're constantly catching up, and not to the point that you're constantly running, right? Just make sure that you have that continuous learning attitude. Yeah, that I today because algorithms are themselves changing like every few months or every so make sure that you are always have some time for yourself to go out and get that domain knowledge if you're interested in, and then you're continuously learning new things, right? Because things are changing on us. The way we are educating ourselves is changing. It was okay to have a physics degree, and then with that physics degree you could continue a 45-year career. That was long time ago. These days, people are moving in careers every 4 to 5 years and shifting because the technology is shifting fast on us. So always be in that continuous learning mode, and make sure you have the time to do that.
All right, thanks for giving that perspective. I think that pretty much answers that question in all different angles. Let's move on to another question here, and I think this one is, how can we go for a further? Okay, so this one is, how can we go for a further round after the initial round in applying for more interviews as a basic skill? How can we go for a further round after the initial round as a basic skill? Okay, I think the question, I actually don't really understand this question. I don't know who responded it. So maybe whoever posted that, Rehab, you can ask that person to rephrase it. But we can go to the next one, which is, how much importance do the employers give to mock? So mocks, especially sharing those achievements for people who come from non-data science majors on social media. So that's kind of answered. Does somebody else have a different perspective on mocks? I don't know if we touched on that in depth, but do you guys think that you already answered this question when it comes to quantity over quality, or do you have some ideas, thoughts on mocks?
I'd say that in terms of courses in general, online courses in general, it's important to do them because they're a good source of learning, to be honest. Especially if you're starting out, they can be a major source of learning for all kinds of things. But the thing, so mocks are really important, and not just them, like even specialized courses are really important. But in terms of, and I saw another question there that was like certificate or expertise. So kind of relating to that, should you, share those certificates as, on your resume and like put them on your LinkedIn everywhere? I mean, you can put them on your LinkedIn because you can put everything there. You should make use of it. But in terms of your resume, you should only highlight what, highlights you best, what describes you best as a data scientist, and what are your top achievements. And that they should never be online courses, because anyone can do online courses and share the certificate. So it's what you've taken from the course in the end, not the course certificate itself. So those don't hold a lot of value in companies, in job applications, or anywhere else. It's what you can do with the knowledge you've gained. And that's outside of certificates and what we've talked about in the past, our projects, recommendations, or anything else that you do. So that's my 2 cents on that.
All right, sounds good. And we have time for a few more questions, 1 or 2 more questions. So I'm going to ask this one. I think it's directed for Nishran. How much importance do I believe you've worked on and managed several AI and machine learning projects. When it comes to the different stages of data science projects, so you have EDA, model building, and production, where do you think most enthusiasts have overstocked skills or experience, and where is the less stocking?
I can tell you that when I first start working, managing a project, the first people, and if there is a data set available, people will jump straight to the modeling part, and they'll start creating super models and images. And by the next day, I have all models on my screen in the Slack channel with images. And I'm like, I, first of all, don't even understand what the data is about. By the next day, you have and modeling is fun. I don't deny that. I like it too. But before I get to the model, I want to sit and just mull over what this problem statement is and what this data is going to be, and then what value am I going to get. So I want to think about both the ends first before I start putting it stuff in the middle, right? Is that actually the end matters a whole lot more, because what is the value am I getting from this project is very critical for me. It's like, what am I building? So I need to have clarity on that. So it takes some time to just build that clarity. And we've worked in projects where we have in the middle of a project, we have to go back and think, did I get the clarity right as to what is my output? Because things will change on you once you discover you don't have enough data sets, or you run into some problems, or you don't find the right features. You will see that your end value might change. So I'd like to start with what I have and ask the why question, right? As I always say, first the why. Understand the whys from both ends. What do I have in hand? Why do I have this data? What do I need to produce out of it? And then start cleaning it up, looking at it. So yes. So the most popular thing is the modeling. And then, of course, the second best is the dashboard, or something that looks very cool and is very visual. And I understand, the EDA part is not very glamorous. You have to sit and clean and analyze and understand all the data. So generally, I see a little more hesitation, but I feel those are the very critical parts of your entire pipeline. And if you show strengths in those areas, of course, you need to have the strength on the machine learning part and other parts. But if you show strengths in that area, in my mind, I think that's a stronger candidate. Mm-hmm. That if you can show me that whether you understand the problem, how do you look at the data, how do you analyze the data, and then get to the machine learning and the modeling part, that to me is a candidate that you can, that sets themselves apart.
Cool. Okay, so that brings us pretty much to the end. I think the main takeaway from that was be really good at EDA, because apparently a lot of people don't want to spend a lot of time on that and data cleaning. So thanks everybody for all of your insights. I think it was a great discussion, and I think a lot of questions were answered. To wrap it up, I'm just going to say a few things. So one is that we can make these kinds of sessions. It seems like we got a lot of engagement and a lot of good questions. So we can make these sessions a series of events with different, types of themes and moderators around the career path. So this can be the first of many, depending on feedback and what we're hearing. There was one question in the audience that I was asking, will a video of this be made available on YouTube? Yes, it will be made available on YouTube for you to look back on and see again. So yeah, to wrap it up, thank you, Nishrin, Rosanna, David, and Ram. You can find all of them on LinkedIn. I'm sure they'd be happy if you reached out to them to ask some more questions targeted and can leverage their experiences and perspectives in helping you guys. So thanks everybody for joining, and thanks to the panelists for a great discussion today.
Thanks, Lucy. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.